So, City Hall is working on a project that will be a first of its kind in Canada. It wants to find a way to make it possible for police and fire to share information. Helping them is Tara Hodgkinson, a criminology professor at Wilfrid Laurier University, and she joins us now from Ontario. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. I just want to start with what is the problem? Why can't agencies share information freely right now?
For sure. So there are a number of laws and legislation in place that make it difficult for these organizations to share their information, and part of that is to ensure privacy for the folks they're collecting data around. That's part of the reason, and that makes it really difficult for them. The second reason is capacity. A lot of them work with very different records management systems. They have very different sort of systems of how they collect information and how they use that information. And so being able to actually share that across silos can be very, very difficult if those systems are very different from each other.
So, what do you have to do on your end to gather and then protect this private information?
For sure. We have to go through a number of levels of privacy and security screening to make sure that we can do this effectively. The first and foremost is going through university ethics, which is a national ethics standard. And then we have a system in place to collect the secure data. And so we have a number of steps that we use to do that. And then it's actually about ensuring that data remains secure. So we have a number of physical security measures within our own research lab, as well as computer security measures. So that ensures it's on an air-gapped system. What that means is essentially it's not online and it can't be accessed by anyone. So it's a number of steps for us in working with those partners to make sure that that data is as secure as possible and people's information is kept safe.
What kind of data are we talking about?
Yeah, so for these folks, it'll look like, for these partners, it'll look like collecting information about where incidents occur, who's involved in those incidents, what were some of the outcomes potentially in terms of the summaries from the police officers, if we're looking at police data, or from the summaries from the folks working at fire, as well as a number of pieces that the city's already collecting and that is publicly available. So that's things like neighborhood reports and ongoing GIS information so that we can bring all of those pieces together.
Now, this is being described as a first in Canada, but are there other examples of this sort of database elsewhere?
Yeah, so it'll be the first at the municipal level, which
Oh,
is
okay.
really exciting. We did have somewhat of a similar example in Canada. It's the only other one, and that was the ICERS lab, which was at Simon Fraser University in Burnaby, BC. And essentially, they brought together RCMP data. As well as Fraser Health Authority data and other data in order to try and understand some of the patterns across the province. That was a little bit more difficult. They weren't able to actually connect that data in the way that we're going to be doing. So that will be the first of its kind in Canada. But we've seen replications of that lab in Australia at the Social Analytics Lab. They've been incredibly successful in connecting crime data as well as health data, education data, and corrections data, which is giving them a very useful look at what's happening across their state, as well as the Jill Dando Institute at the University College London.
Back to the work in our city, though, I mean, it kind of makes sense how having all of this data in one place will help agencies, but how will it help people who are homeless?
Yeah, I think the major thing that it's going to do is enable us to see where we're replicating resources. So I think there's a number of service agencies, and it's not just fire and police. It's
Hmm.
absolutely a number of the community service groups that also respond to people experiencing homelessness, to see where there's overlap in that service delivery, to see where folks are maybe slipping through the cracks and they're not being seen soon or when they should be. And so we're waiting too long and we're not getting to them soon enough. And so we're able to then determine, where are the better intervention points? How can we create more holistic response models? And how can we essentially help people sooner and better?
Will these other community response groups be able to access this database?
Not the database specifically, but they
Okay.
will be able to access some of the results from it. We're also working with a number of the community partners now in Saskatoon about how they can share their information as well. So we can just make a much more robust story and better understand where those folks are showing up.
And then how will it address crime and community safety?
I think in a very similar way. I think we're often responding and overreacting
Hmm.
to crime and safety in our communities rather than preventing. And so there's a number of opportunities to identify where problem places might be emerging, where folks might be again slipping through those cracks and not being seen early on when they really need that support. And so being able to identify that and to identify pathways for prevention rather than which is much more cost effective than to be continuously responding to the same folks.
Tara, how long will it take for you to organize and secure all of this information so that it can finally be put to work here?
So it's a significant amount of data that we're looking at, and I'm not going to be shy about how long it's going to take. It probably is going to be about 6 months to a year just to get everything together. And part of the reason for that, again, is those different record management systems. Everybody has different ways of inputting data. Once that occurs, once we have that matched, after that we just repeat our protocols. So as we receive new data, as time passes, we'll be able to do that much more quickly and respond much better. And so we're hoping that we can start producing some meaningful results for the city at that year mark. But that's not going to look like a typical report that gets sat on a shelf and nobody ever reads. That's going to be ongoing and really ensuring that those first responders are working directly with us so that they can respond to that as quickly as possible.
Is this something other communities can use as well?
I think it would be a great tool for other communities. It takes a lot of commitment and capacity to get it done. I think that's what's really unique about what we're seeing in Saskatoon is that the leadership from fire and the police and the city has really come together on these issues rather than continuing to work in their silos and continuing to just go about business as usual. They're really trying to do something different. And I think that kind of leadership and willingness to take a chance like this and do something exciting like this is really amazing. And so if we could see that in other municipalities, there's absolutely the opportunity for this to be replicated in other places and to have the same kind of effect across, the province, as well as in other municipalities across Canada.
Well, thank you so much for walking us through this. It is very exciting for our city. We really appreciate it.